Sarah, in reference to the president's tweets this morning that have been a matter of some discussion today, you said earlier on Fox News that the president has a right to defend himself when he is attacked, and it's no secret that this particular program has been very critical of him. However, the nature of the tweets this morning has drawn condemnation from people on Capitol Hill, including the Speaker of the House, Senator Graham, Senator Susan Collins, all of whom are allies of the president. Did the president go too far with this tweet in its deeply personal nature?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the president has been attacked mercilessly on personal accounts by members on that program. And I think he's been very clear that when he gets attacked, he's going to hit back. I think the American people elected somebody who's tough, who's smart, and who's a fighter. And that's Donald Trump. And I don't think that it's a surprise to anybody that he fights fire with fire. The things that this show has called him, and not just him, but numerous members of his staff, including myself and many others, are very deeply personal. So to then turn and pretend like, this approach is, I guess it's kind of like we're living in the twilight zone. They do this day after day after day, and then the president responds and defends himself, and everybody is appalled and blown away. Frankly, if this had happened in the previous administration, the type of attacks launched on this program, the things they say, utterly stupid, personality disorder, mentally ill, constant personal attacks, calling multiple members liars to their faces while they're sitting on their programs, the rest of the media would have said, guys, no way, hold on. But nobody does that. But the president, he's not going to step back. He's showed that, and that's exactly what he did today.
If I could just follow on that, Sarah, if I could just follow on that. A couple of the criticisms from supporters of the president have been that this particular tweet was beneath the dignity of the office. Where does the president draw that line on the dignity of the office?
Look, I think that he shows that every day in the decisions that he's making, the focus and the priorities he's laid out in his agenda. But he's not going to sit back and be attacked by the liberal media, Hollywood elites, and when they hit him, he's going to hit back.
I need to get to Sanjay, but I want to show a wide shot of our panel here, because the same thing sort of happens because we have this political talk on television. And as you can probably remember, last week I tweeted out a picture of all of us in the green room, and we were all talking, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you get along!" And there were some harsh words said. They don't realize that sometimes we go out for a beer after this. Republican, Democrat, or whatever you want, we all actually get along. We may disagree on television, but nobody hates each other on these panels.
You can disagree without being
that far.
Yeah, well, Ryan and I are. Yeah. But you can look at the phrase "disagree without being disagreeable."
Yeah.
Used to be a thing that, like, we taught our kids, we talked about.
Yeah.
The congressman makes the right point, which is it's fine to disagree. We have two parties for a reason.
Right.
Brian and Amanda don't see things always the exact same way. That's fine. It doesn't mean that one of them is a terrible person and one of them is a good person. Yeah. That's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, but I tell you who I always agree with, and that's Sanjay Gupta, because he's the man and he knows everything, and he's going to tell us about some encouraging news tonight about Congressman Steve Scalise, seriously injured in yesterday's shooting. He's our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Gupta. What do you know? Update us on the condition at this hour.
Well, there is some good news about the congressman. They say that he's improved over the last 24 hours. He's still in critical condition. And, I think, Don, you and I talked about this last night. People think a gunshot wound to the hip maybe not be as concerning. It can be a very serious injury. And that's why you're hearing that he's had a couple of operations, another procedure. There are blood vessels in this area. And when you got a rifle wound, a bullet wound from a rifle, that's a high-velocity injury. And that means not only do you have to sort of follow the trajectory of the bullet and sort of figure out what the bullet did, but it also creates a blast injury, or a cavitation injury, as it's called. So that's what the doctors have been focusing on, trying to understand exactly the extent of the injuries, stopping all that bleeding. And I'll point out as well, Don, this is not unexpected that he'd have more than one operation, because sometimes you just stop operating to allow the patient to sort of recover from the operation, give some blood products back, and give some clotting factors to allow the blood to clot back, all these sorts of things. So that's sort of what's going on. But the encouraging news, to your point, they say he's improved over the last 24 hours, probably needs less blood now, probably needs less medications.
And just because he may have other procedures, procedures don't necessarily mean surgery. They're just things that they need to attend to, right? Correct?
Right. It might,
Yeah.
they're maybe not things that he requires general anesthesia for. It
Yeah.
could be a smaller type thing.
Got it. So witnesses have said, Sanjay, that they saw the congressman dragging himself roughly like 15 yards shortly after the shooting. Could that possibly have affected his injuries?
You know, the magnitude, obviously, of the injury was from the bullet injury. So everything else sort of pales in comparison to that. What is interesting is that, you know, certainly he was able to do that. He was able to according to his office statement, that he was stable, that he was in good spirits, that he was even able to speak to his wife on a cell phone for a period of time. But just to give you an idea of how quickly things can turn with these sorts of injuries, and this is what trauma surgeons always think about, from the time that he was at that field, it was about a 5 to 10 minute transport by helicopter to the hospital. So they say he was in good spirits, talking to his wife at the field. 5 to 10 minutes later, he's in critical condition. And that's because of the bleeding. So that deterioration happened during that time. So whether it was the dragging, you know, himself out to the middle of the field, clearly there was a lot of bleeding, and his body was able to keep up for a period of time. By the time he got to the hospital, he needed to go to the operating room.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, thank you so much for updating us on the congressman's condition. We appreciate it. I need to get to some breaking news now. This is about Jared Kushner. It's from our senior White House correspondent, Jeff Zelny. Jeff joins us now. The Washington Post, Jeff, reporting that the special counsel is investigating Jared Kushner's business dealings. What's the response from Jared Kushner tonight?
Well, Don, the lawyer for Jared Kushner is responding in this way. Let's take a look at this statement from Jamie Gorelick, his lawyer, and she says this: "We do not know what this report refers to. It would be standard practice for the special counsel to examine financial records to look for anything related to Russia. Mr. Kushner previously volunteered to share with Congress what he knows about the Russia-related matters. He will do the same if he is contacted in connection with any other inquiry." So, Don, what this is all about is here, the people who are close to Jared Kushner, who have spoken to him, have said that, look, this is something that is standard and routine. We knew several weeks and months ago that that members of Congress, these committees, were interested in this. This is just simply the special counsel saying that this is going to be part of their investigation as well. But, Don, again, this draws it even closer to the Oval Office, to the president. Jared Kushner, of course, you know, the closest of close advisors here. He says, you know, he has done nothing wrong here. He's more than willing to share any information with the congressional committees as well as the special counsel, Don.
All right, Jeff Zelny, thank you very much. Also, we're going to continue to talk about this Vice President lawyering up as well tonight. My panel will discuss that. But I want to get back to the ballpark now. We're going to find some congressmen there. Congressman Barry Loudermilk and Kevin Yoder both join us. Representative, thank you both for joining us, by the way. Representative Loudermilk was at practice yesterday when a gunman opened fire, seriously wounding Congressman Steve Scalise. So how do you feel?
You know, pretty exhausted right now. You know, most of the guys on our team had really lived a traumatizing experience yesterday. You know, we're happy to be here. We're winners because we're here. Things could have been a whole lot worse. You know, anybody who was out there yesterday got very little sleep last night. But we're just blessed. We had the Capitol Police there. You know, several shots were hitting the ground all around me throughout the entire firefight. But, you know, they drew fire away from us so we could, you know, try to help some of the wounded. And they were the true heroes.
Mm-hmm. And Congressman Yoder, what's going on with you tonight? How do you feel?
Well, I think it's just been a surreal atmosphere the last 24 hours or so. Tonight was a great opportunity for everybody to come together. You had Democrats and Republicans hugging, and people were crying. And, you know, in this tragedy, it brings people together. And you've really seen Congress come together in the last day and a half or so. And tonight, you know, playing America's pastime here in Washington National Stadium, we had a record turnout, 25,000 people. You know, the Democrats won, unfortunately, but more than anything, it was an opportunity to just get together, play a game of baseball, and try to heal our Congress, heal the country. You know, we're feeling going forward that this is an opportunity to really, you know, redouble our efforts at civility, at working with people across the aisle, at solving problems, and sort of changing the tone in this country, trying to get people to work together more, and listen to one another. And, you know, things have just gotten so caustic that, you know, boiled over yesterday. And I think Congress is really coming together. We hope the country does as well.
Yeah. I think you guys need a well-deserved rest. I think right now you're on fumes or adrenaline, as they say, and well-deserved. We've seen you all over television. I'm sure you probably haven't gotten a good night's rest last night, but we appreciate you joining us tonight, and we hope this spirit of bipartisanship will last in Washington and around the country. So again, thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
We do too.
So do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring in now CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza, political analyst Tara Palmieri, and political commentator Ryan Lizza. Also political commentators Brian Fallon, Amanda Carpenter, and Mike Shields. And I've got Cillizza and Lizza
That's right.
tonight.
We're trying to make it hard for you, Don. Job isn't easy.
So I'm going to go to you, Ryan, just because he's being a
Do you remember that time?
smarty
You remember that
pants
time you called me by Chris's name?
I did, and he wasn't
Did
even
you?
with he wasn't even with the network
I
yet.
don't
So
want to bring that up.
So I would like to talk about, you saw the gentleman at the ballpark there, all three congressmen, and they were saying, you know, it's time for it to stop. How realistic is that?
I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic. I think it's great that people are reflecting on what happened and talking about that and maybe looking for opportunities that didn't seem so obvious before what happened yesterday. But, you know, there are pretty deep differences between the two parties for a reason. And I think it's going to take a lot of soul searching and real effort by both sides to figure out if there are issues that just heretofore haven't been obvious that could be worked on together. Just think of the main issue that Democrats want to talk about in the wake of a tragedy like this, gun violence and what to do about that. You don't see any movement on either side on that issue, and we've had, you know, shooting after shooting that just has not affected that issue. So that's the most obvious thing that has just been stuck no matter how many times there is a tragic shooting like this. So I don't see anything changing there, unfortunately. Yeah. Maybe there are some other issues. You know, it's good that people are at least talking about that and maybe reflecting a little bit more.
Amanda, I think it's interesting that, you know, you have these guys at the ballpark saying, you know, everybody needs to tone it down, ratcheting down. And then you have the President of the United States tweeting today and really using his Twitter feed in the same way he did, just as vehement, just as vocal as before the shooting. How do you reconcile the two?
I mean, it's strange. You can see Donald Trump is like he has the good angel on one shoulder and the bad angel here. Good angel released that lovely video statement. Bad angel tweeting these conspiracy theories about the deep state. I mean, look at everything that's going on with the Russia investigation. He has essentially spun a conspiracy theory about the deep state to deflect questions about Russia. This isn't just about him protecting himself. He is discrediting the American institution. He is discrediting law enforcement. He is discrediting the people who keep us safe. That's what I'm worried about, big picture. I don't know how he gets out of this. He needs to take a step back and realize what he's doing when he's thinking he's protecting himself. He's damaging an important American institution.
Mike Shields, I know you want to respond to this. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is the leaks are real. So you're saying it's a conspiracy theory about the deep state. There is clearly a coordinated pattern. It's not like we've just had one leak or two leaks. There are people, and my dad was an NSA contractor. I have deep admiration for the national security apparatus and their staff. But there are people that are taking it upon themselves to say, you know what, I don't agree with what the voters did, and I don't like the policies of this president, so I'm going to leak something, which, by the way, in other countries turns into a military coup, right? So that's the same intellectual argument that you have a choice. If you don't agree with what the government's doing of the elected people, you resign from office. That's what Jim Comey actually should have done, right? Instead, we have people that decide upon themselves, I don't like what the government's doing, so I'm going to do something illegal and leak it. And now we're seeing it in the Mueller investigation.
Here's what we're going to find. One point. We will find out whether the leakers are leaking because they saw something and they wanted to speak out against it, or they wanted to smear the president. We're going to find that out. It will all be exposed, and we will know if they're leakers that want to smear the president or they're whistleblowers, because there's a big difference.
Mike, let me just ask you a question before you respond. Mike, let me just ask you a question before you respond. My question was about tone, about can't the president say, I don't like these leaks, But I think everything should be investigated with the Russia situation because we need to figure out what's going on so that we can move on with the business of the country. Isn't it really about tone rather than...
You know, what I find in Washington is that a lot of people have been hung up on the president's tone since he started to run for office. And guess what? He's not going to change his tone no matter how many people on television or all of us keep talking about it.
But that's the whole point. But that's the whole point of what every single lawmaker we've had on in the wake of the shooting has said. We all need to watch our tone and tone it down. The change comes from the top. And if the president doesn't do it, then if he doesn't set the example...
But now you're trying to connect his tone to some of the stuff that we've seen going on, and I think that's a bad connection to make.
How is that a bad connection?
Because we're talking about the tone he has about fighting back against an investigation, and we're talking about members of Congress who were literally shot yesterday.
No one's linking those two.
No one is saying that. No one is saying that he's
responsible. I thought you were going there with that link.
No one is saying that he's responsible for that. But what I'm saying is everyone who has come on, and the congressmen who were involved in the shooting were the people who actually raised it and saying, we need to watch it on social media, we need to watch it on television, we need to... So if the president isn't doing it, why should anyone else?
Look, the president right now is being attacked as an autocrat, someone who is to be resisted, who shouldn't even have been elected to office, who doesn't deserve to be in office. He is responding to those types of attacks. I think that kind of rhetoric has been what's been ratcheted up, and what people are saying, that's what needs to be brought down. I was talking to a reporter tonight who was unaware of how many death threats members of Congress get. I mean, we've seen the town halls that we covered on television. We had cameras at all of them because it's such great theater to cover these town hall meetings. In fact, what was going on is some people were taking it too far, and their rhetoric was getting higher and higher and higher and threatening members of Congress to the point where they're worried about their families.
Well, I think that's for everyone. The political system, and you can speak to this, it's become high-stakes everything. There's death panels. The global warming is going to imperil the world. Staffers get it all the time, too. I'm sure you've experienced it working for a high-pressure person.
Do you mind, you guys, I need to get to a break. We went a bit long because we had the congressman with us, so everyone stick with me here. We're going to continue our conversation. Also, straight ahead, much more on the report that the special counsel is investigating Jared Kushner's business dealings.